Hi, I'm Glenn Stebbins, and today is September 24th, 2019, and I'm here with Dr. Pablo Martinez-Martin, and we're going to talk a little bit about his career and his development as he goes on. We're here at the 23rd International Congress for the MDS Society in Nice, France. So I'd like to start off first, Pablo, with if you could tell me a little bit about your early career and your development in movement disorders and in some areas of your specialization.
Thanks, Glenn, for the introduction. I was a student of the School of Medicine in the Universidad Complutense in Madrid. I started a new plan of studies in medicine, very hard. When finally we finished, I had to go to the army for a period, and after that, there were not positions for neurologists in the market. So I remained without a work for 9 months until finally I obtained a position of general practitioner. After this, I was rescued for making the neurology of the toxic syndrome caused by rapeseed oil. That was very bad situation for the country. And next, I went to the National Hospital for Infectious Diseases, in which I was working for 8 years. After this, I moved to the Red Cross Central Hospital, another university hospital 2 years later. And finally, in 2001, I went to the National Center of Epidemiology in the Carlos III Institute of Health until my retirement 3 months ago.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So really you started out then in toxic exposure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, I think we all in the society think of you as relating to health-related quality of life, definitely, which could have some connection with toxic exposure, but also measurement and clinometrics and psychometrics. So how did that evolve out of this exposure, you know, toxic exposure beginning? How did you start getting interested in health-related quality of life and measurement?
Oh, yeah. First of all, my first job when I was in neurology was 9 months after finishing my training in neurology in a pharmaceutical company, Merck Sharp & Dohme. At that time, Merck Sharp & Dohme was the first company in the world, a very good company, and I received a lot of help from them in order to start to learn English, because at that time in Spain we studied French mainly. I started to attend the first congresses in my life, etc. And the drug was at my chairs was levodopa, Cinemet, the famous. So I started to be very interested in Parkinson's disease. In addition, when I thought about my doctoral thesis, my tutor, Dr. Felix Bermejo, proposed to me to work in the thesis about rating scales. So this is the origin of my interest by the scales. In 1995, I can remember that the Oxford group produced the PDQ-39 simultaneously with other 2 or 3 instruments that appeared almost simultaneously in Canada and the Netherlands about quality of life, specific for quality of life in Parkinson's disease. Right. And I was immediately in contact with the Oxford group. They lent me the instrument. I make a cross-cultural adaptation to Spain and did the first study in quality of life in Parkinson's disease, independent of the developers of the instruments, and applied to a population of patients in Parkinson's disease. The first symposium on quality of life in Parkinson's disease was organized by me with Andrew Lees in Marbella, in Spain. And the first book about quality of life in Parkinson's disease was edited by this man who died. I can't remember the name. Yeah. Well, it was also a production of us. So we started also very early in
Yeah, yeah.
working together in Parkinson's disease, in the quality of life, etc.
Right, and it seems like that evolved into a general interest in rating scales and validation, development of rating scales and validation. What do you think has been one of your major contributions to the field in both health-related quality of life, but also in rating scale development and validation?
I had very serious problems during my thesis for the analysis of the rating scale because I had not education in this area.
Right.
I had to read a lot, looking for a lot of different sources in order to inform myself about this field. And finally, I did my thesis. Today will be probably different, but I learned a lot because it was the fruit of a terrible effort in order to organize my mind around the topic.
Yeah,
And in coincidence with the appearance of the quality of life instrument for Parkinson's disease, etc., I learned at that moment that people working in this area have developed the methodology for validating instruments of quality of life and for analyzing the results, etc. So it was a coincidence in the time in my case with both avenues of knowledge. And so I take from each one in order to enrich the other.
Right.
And finally, I was able to propose like a systematic approach for the validation of rating scales, questionnaires, and quality of life instruments.
So you not only taught yourself, but then you were able to help others in following that same path and how to do scale development and validation. Your mentorship has been remarkable. The number of students that you've taught, the number of individuals in the society that you've influenced. What has been your approach to mentoring students? How do you think of yourself as a mentor?
My advice for them, for instance, could be said in three words: education, information, and devotion or dedication.
Yeah.
So that means you have to have a good education, you have to learn as much as possible, to have their eyes open and they are also attending everything.
Yeah.
You have to be informed, you have to read permanently the advances in the field and to be making comparison with your knowledge and between different authors, etc. And finally, you have to work very hardly in order to apply your knowledge to the questions that very probably will arise when you are informed about the field, because immediately you will be able to identify the gaps, for instance, which is a very good field for working on.
Yeah.
I need this kind of scale. Doesn't exist. Going to develop one.
Right.
So I think that is more or less the general advice for people.
Good. Well, so in your own development, what has been some of the major challenges, or what have been some of the major challenges that you've experienced?
Initially was English and statistics.
Your English is fine.
I had no idea at that time of nothing at all of these two matters, but I was convinced that in the future they could be absolutely necessary to me. So I did a big effort in order to take some knowledge about the language and about statistics, which is a very complex matter. And the other very important problem at that time was the availability of information. To get a paper was really a challenge.
Yeah.
It was impossible to obtain sometimes even 30% of the paper that were needed to complete the review on a topic, etc. All that has disappeared now. Fortunately, I have in my pocket a memory with 2,000 26,000 papers ordered by year, journal, etc., etc. So this is fantastic now.
Yeah. The access to information is so phenomenal now.
Even the interchange of information with other colleagues that now seems very, very normal. At that time was almost impossible. Through letters, through the post mail, etc. So
maybe a fax if it were really, really important.
This was an advance already.
Well, so when you think about overcoming those challenges and being exposed to these new opportunities right now, where do you see things going in the future? Where do you think we will be 10, 15 years from now?
It's very difficult to know about the future. I think that in the future will be a lot of advantages. For instance, the access, the information, the collaboration between groups at an international or even worldwide circumstances. But also very important, probably we will have very good advances using the artificial intelligence, new advances in biomarkers, in genetics, in molecular, etc., etc. The challenge, however, may be that some of the aspects of some diseases, for instance, neurodegenerative diseases, we have been in several occasions apparently near to know the genuine mechanisms producing Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease. However, never we have been able to obtain the final result exactly. Yeah. And I think that this, in spite of the optimistic view for the future in this aspect, maybe that still we have to wait a time for that. And the other important thing I see occasionally in new waves of doctors is the excessive reliance in complementary proofs. They have decreased a little the contact with the person who is the patient, going to use the technology like the first approach to the person without knowing really what are the problems of the person. So I think that for this situation, one of the remedies maybe, for instance, to go in depth in quality of life aspect or something, to know the perspective of the patient about the disease.
Right. Well, you think, I hear from many of my colleagues that their time with the patient is so limited because they're doing their electronic medical records and all these types of things. So
I suffered this for years. It really creates anxiety in the doctors too, because it's an overload permanently, which is difficult to bear.
Right. Well, and I would assume that it's true for you as well as for my other healthcare colleagues. You went into this to work with people. You wanted to help people, and now suddenly you have all these other requirements. So one of the things, your role in the society right now is co-chair of the Rating Skills program. Been very successful. Thank you. Very successful program, doing quite well. Where do you see the future of rating scales going? What do you think is out on the horizon for us?
I think since years ago, I think that while we are unable to measure directly effects of the disease, for instance, the number of cells in the nigra, or the amount of levodopa which is passed through the synapses in the basal ganglia, I don't know. While we are unable to make direct measurements on the structural or physiological mechanisms involved in the disease, we will have to use this kind of measurements that finally, when well developed and validated, give a very reliable information about the patients. So I think that at least in the near future they will be still necessary, and perhaps we modified the application of the scale through the electronic platforms or devices, etc. But still, we have to use writing scale for a time.
Yes, yes. They give a good proxy for us to work
exactly.
with. So, with all the work that you've done, all of the involvement that you've had, both professionally in the society as well as in your own professional life, what have you done to sort of maintain your humanity? What have you done to maintain that work-life balance that's so important to all of us?
In my particular case, I have always a big devotion by the family and friends. I think that they are the most relevant part of the life of a person. And also I think that it's very interesting to have hobbies or activities which are in some way unrelated to the profession, but able to balance the life in this sense. For instance, to be a doctor and to be a musician, or to be a doctor and to be as a person practicing sports or going to the countryside from time to time, etc. I think that this is a perfect manner of keeping the balance between.
And what's your hobby?
My main hobby during all my life have been martial arts.
Martial arts.
I've been practicing martial arts for 50 years.
Oh my goodness.
In coincidence with my retirement, I had to leave also the practice because I had problems in a joint. But it had been.
What did you study specifically? Which martial art did you work in?
I started with judo,
Uh-huh.
but I've been over 30 years practicing karate and kobudo. Also a little of Jaido, so many.
I love it. That's fantastic.
I have also a black belt in Bujutsu, so it's just amount of things.
Well, that's good. I think that it represents that rounding of the personality, the completing of the personality, so you're not just unidimensional.
In several occasions in my life that I had very, very serious problems at home by diseases, etc., etc. The only point who remained in the same place than before and centering my mind around were the practice of these martial arts. So I'm very, very recognized to the balance they give in my life, in my personal life.
That's wonderful. Well, good, good. Well, I think, the contributions that you have made to the field of movement disorders, to the field of health-related quality of life, rating scale development and validation are phenomenal. And I think that it's been a pleasure working with you and being able to learn from you, because I think that you have so much to offer to all of us.
I've been gifted by the opportunity of working with a lot of colleagues around the world. And to me, he has been one of the most important facets of my activity, to be in contact with people from America, Asia, other countries in Europe, etc., etc. And I found very fantastic persons around working hardly with a stimulating vision of the life for the professional life. You are one of these persons.
Thank you. You as well. So I think in closing, maybe, is there anything special that you would want to say to younger members in the society who are just beginning to become involved in movement disorders, be it as a physician or a scientist, or what would you advise?
The first one perhaps would be to work in the particular professional life, but keeping an eye on the development of the movement disorder society. This is a very important entity for all of us interested in the field. And the achievements the society is obtaining are really fantastic. I'm absolutely astonished how the society has been improving continuously, thanks to the effort of every person who is member, the committees, the presidents, etc., etc. So I think that to maintain the contact and to work in collaboration with the society the proposals of the society, the committees, etc., will be very important for the future. And for the person individually, as I said before, to read, to study, to work, and to keep in collaboration with other colleagues around.
Wonderful. Well, Pablo, thank you so much.
Thank
Really
you,
is a
Glenn.
pleasure.
Thank you.